Technically, we're at our wind-up time, but I think we've had so many questions in, and more than actually any other panel today. I'm just going to put through a few of them to you for 5 minutes, if everyone's kind of okay with that. And a few of them have got a theme, actually, and it's something that you've all talked about as well, and I'll try and find the relevant ones. The first, it says, how do we prevent what is perceived as nice to have from being cut at the first sign of cost pressure on a project? And there's others that are along these lines. It's stated that good design isn't necessarily more expensive. However, I would argue that is seldom the case. Beautiful roads are invariably more expensive than purely functional ones. On the RDP, there's no budget for this. And then, how does design make its way into cost-benefit analysis, which many road projects depend on for funding? How do you monetize good value? So how do you sort of bring in the costs at that sort of early process? So effectively, it's all about, you're saying it's not more expensive. People are skeptical of that. So, you know, how do you basically explain that it is potentially even cheaper sometimes? How can it be cheaper to have extra things or a change in route? Who wants to take that on?
I'll go first, and then I'll let others.
Because it's a big statement that they're potentially cheaper or the same money, but people are sceptical.
So I suppose the challenge is, if you've got a large sum of money to deliver a project, wouldn't you want to deliver good design? Isn't that the purpose of that project, to deliver good design? And I suppose the reason why good design doesn't cost money, more money should I say, is because actually by understanding the people and the place in which that scheme is being delivered, you come up with a better solution that you by bringing your stakeholders and your local communities with you as part of that understanding of people. Actually, you get, as Martin suggested with the project in Ely, you bring the communities alongside, so you're spending less time defending what your project is trying to achieve, because actually you're delivering something that is more sympathetic with what they want. So actually, the challenge is actually how you deliver good design. One of the biggest challenges that we have as a strategic design panel and as Highways England is, of course, that projects are a long time in gestation. And actually, one of the conversations we have most around the strategic design panel is, I wish we'd seen this project 5 years ago. And our challenge as we move forward is actually how we get schemes early enough in the design process so that we can go through a design review process which can have real meaningful impact, as John has described, rather than just something which is just trying to deal within the constraints of a DCO or whatever it might be. I suppose, so the design process itself, get in early, and actually by thinking about place and people, you can save money. And a good example with that would be requests for statement structures. So quite expensive statement structures. Well, why? What is it about? You know, why do we want one there? What should it look like? And just those sorts of decisions that can influence, you know, what a good outcome might look like. But others will have another view.
I think there was a really good point made in the previous presentation about changing our focus from outputs to outcomes and seeking to deliver much more beneficial outcomes for society. So rather than focusing on the very narrow metric for a highway of journey time or journey time reliability, looking at what that highway can deliver to society in terms of social benefit, health benefit, access to work, access to education, all kinds of things. If we do that, then we're always going to be governed by cost. But if we do that, we are going to be understanding projects in terms of value rather than cost. And that's a much more healthy and much more mature way of exploring projects.
John, what's your take on it in practical sense as well, when you've sat down with these engineers and said, actually, could we use a different material, or, you know, give this a different function, and they're asking you about money?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it does help for us for the design teams and the project managers and engineers to open up about the pressures they're under, which could be financial or to do with time or to do with the local politics of the areas they're going through. And certainly in terms of design of bridges and hardware and cuts and whatever in the landscape, if they open up about that, we can understand about that. I mean, in a sense, one of the watchwords, I suppose, is less is more. And actually, it stands to reason that if you do less and you design something with a degree of, not minimalism, but efficiency and slenderness and whatever, it often looks better and it won't cost as much. But that's a very easy sort of take on it. But I think there are other things that we're increasingly finding whereby, you know, you can stand back from a very elegant design that someone's designed, which is very practical, it works, it's done by the engineers and working with the architects and the landscapers. And then you suddenly see, and these guys know about this because I go on about it, pan back and see a roundabout which is festooned with 200 lighting posts because the code said that's what you've got to do, 200 yards before a junction or something like that. So, and you think, what a waste of money. And surely in this day and age, we can actually light a junction much more efficiently than that in a different way. So those sort of things have to be questioned because not only that, but also because I've worked with the water industry and whatever, sometimes we need to open up the mindset that I do hear engineers who are very experienced working on. They say, oh, we've always done it like this. Well, things have got to change, guys, because we want better looking and better working roads, I think. So.
Kat, another interesting question, which I'll give to you. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't the prospective road users be involved in the design review? So what interaction is there with people? This is all about usability and, you know, people enjoying it. How much work is done going out there and asking people what they want?
Well, I mean, I would say that we should absolutely be engaging all the different types of users of roads in that process. I mean, I think, you know, a great design reviews could definitely start to have people who are accessing roads, using them in different ways as part of that. But I think also, particularly if we start thinking about highways and roads, to have these wider social benefits. So if actually the question was like, how can we increase the health of this local community? Not only then do you start to see allies within Sport England or other organisations, local authorities, who also have kind of funding from different pots, but then you start to, like the example that you gave, Martin, see other uses for the roads beyond the actual car and the driver and the passenger.
Do you think the timing of this is brilliant actually for you guys? Because we do seem to be at a tipping point with sustainability where, you know, we're expanding all the roads and there are carbon footprint, you know, elements to it as well, and people are trying to balance those two things. You could actually be brought in to really help that, to sell projects, to persuade councils to go for them, and so on.
So if where the Road to Good Design is stored within the design manual is actually in a section under the auspices of sustainability. Sustainability has to be part of good design. We have to be thinking about the long term, you know, clearly, you know, elements of the design, whether it's drainage or the materials that the infrastructure is made from, have to endure for the long time. But actually really thinking about that as part of the design process, you know, taking on board the requirements of the code. And I take the point that John was making earlier about, you know, the design manual. The design manual, yes, it's and surprising to me to hear this, I expect, but the design manual is a set of requirements that are focused on particular different elements of infrastructure. The design process has to be how you bring those standards, how you look for departures, how you actually develop a narrative associated with individual schemes that actually are sympathetic to the place, whether it be their sustainability and what might happen in terms of flooding in that location, or indeed how people might use that, all has to be embodied into the design process. So, you know, a turning of the design manual for roads and bridges handle, I would argue, will not get you good design. Actually, what you need to do is have a designer and a designer, and usually a design team, will actually start looking at compromises and opportunities within that design process, and look for opportunities to depart from those standards if that's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Last-
and I'd agree, and I think
sorry.
good designs will spread like wildfire through the industry if they work.
Last quick question here from Jim Standing. I can't think who that could possibly be, but basically, and it's come up actually, could more imagination be applied to grey Soviet-style gantries that characterise smart motorways, for example? What could we do with gantries? I mean, you showed that example actually with the faces on. You know, is that an element that you've looked at yet? You know, we looked at the roads, but what about all this clutter? What could be done with that?
I think we'd like to look at it. I mean, I said to the strategic panel, I mean, most people have idea. I was traveling through Austria this summer, and I really enjoyed. I was being driven, so I could actually look at it. They've got some new gantries over the motorway to Salzburg, which are very elegantly designed, and they've got this sort of beautiful mustard yellow flank, and it's like something like you might see on an Audi car, but it's on a gantry. And it's almost counterintuitive. It's not invisible, but you enjoy it. And you're looking for the next one, and some are cantilevered, some go across. And the way they do that with the yellow and the signs is very good. So good design can really change. So we just need to investigate it.
So John talked about design review being a new thing. Those who've been in the industry long enough will know that actually it's not a new thing. It's a thing that we used to do, but we are doing again now. I think something else that we're going to be doing is looking at design competitions, and actually how can we build, you know, gantries that are efficient to construct, work in a modular way, but are actually good to look at, so they do their function, but also actually, you know, represent good design. And that's the point that Martin was making about the beautiful ordinary, and actually how, you know, something like a gantry, which we repeat many, many times, actually, how can we think about how we build those so that they, you know, they become the design classic, perhaps, of the signs that we see across the network now.
Okay, thank you. It's a really stimulating conversation, and like I say, we've had more questions on this than any other, so I think people are really interested in it as well. Please thank our panel.